I thought I had it all figured out. A stable marriage, 2 beautiful kids, a life most people would envy. But one night, one unexpected face from my past made me question everything. Not because I wanted to cheat, but because I realized I already had, just not in the way you think. This is the story of how I almost lost everything without ever leaving the room. I know how this is going to sound. I sound like that guy, middle-aged, regret-soaked, typing alone in a dark room, probably nursing a whiskey, realizing he might have fumbled the biggest decision of his life. But I swear to you, I wasn't always this way. Back in college, I was with this girl, Maddie. She was electricity. The kind of person who'd dye her hair red just because she felt like fire that week. She danced in the kitchen barefoot, made friends with strangers in elevators, and somehow managed to turn every mundane moment into a memory. She made me feel like life was more than just checking boxes. With her, everything felt alive. But Maddie wasn't safe. She was unpredictable, intense, passionate, but chaotic. One month she was planning a trip to Thailand, the next she was applying to grad schools in New York. She had dreams bigger than the both of us, and it terrified me. I was pre-med, focused, structured. I wanted a stable life. I was a planner, she was a jumper. And I thought love wasn't supposed to feel like free-falling every day. Enter Emily. Emily was the textbook definition of dependable. Soft-spoken, kind, family-oriented. She came from a good family, had a steady job lined up right after college, and when she said she'd be somewhere, she was. No surprises, no drama. Just peace. And when I started dating her after Maddie and I finally blew up after one of our "what the hell are we doing" fights turned nuclear, it felt like I could breathe again. My friends said she was wife material. My parents adored her. She made sense. She fit. Fast forward 10 years. We've been married for 6. 2 kids. Nice house. Good jobs. We host game nights, take turns driving to soccer practice, do Sunday morning pancakes. It's all fine. But lately, when I brush my teeth at night and glance at my reflection, just for a second, I don't recognize the man staring back. I don't think Emily notices. Or maybe she does, but she's too kind to say anything. She always was good at keeping things inside. What triggered all this? 2 weeks ago, I saw Maddie again. I was at a medical conference in Chicago. I wasn't even supposed to go, my colleague dropped out last minute and I filled in. During one of the evening mixers, while I was zoning out next to the hummus platter, I heard someone behind me say, "You still hate cilantro?" I turned around and nearly dropped my glass. Maddie. Older, sure. Softer around the edges. But still glowing in that wild way that made your heart race a little faster just by being near her. We talked. 4 hours. We skipped the after party, ended up in a dive bar 3 blocks down, and just fell into it. Like time hadn't passed. Like we were 21 again, sitting on the roof of my crappy college apartment, talking about everything and nothing until sunrise. She told me she was divorced. No kids. Lives in Portland now, runs her own event design company. She still travels a ton. Still wears mismatched earrings. Still refuses to own a microwave. And then she looked at me with those same firelit eyes and said, "Do you ever wonder?" God, I shouldn't have let her ask that. I shouldn't have let myself answer. Because ever since, that question's been playing on loop in my head. Do I wonder? I wonder every time Emily laughs politely at one of my bad jokes, and I remember how Maddie used to belly laugh, head thrown back, tears in her eyes kind of laugh. I wonder when I look at my perfectly organized garage and remember Maddie's apartment cluttered with half-finished art projects and Polaroids stuck to the walls with washi tape. I wonder when I roll over in bed at 2 a.m. staring at the ceiling while Emily breathes evenly next to me and all I can think about is how Maddie used to wake me up at midnight just to go get pancakes because she had a craving and life's too short for tomorrow. And the worst part? I don't know if I'm just being nostalgic. If I'm painting the past prettier than it was because I'm bored, or scared, or hitting some cliché midlife crisis like a bad rom-com character. Or if I really did trade love for safety. I haven't told anyone this. Not my friends. Not my brother. Certainly not Emily. I just needed to get it out. Somewhere. Anywhere. I haven't seen Maddie since that night. She hugged me goodbye outside the bar, whispered, "You look good, Doc," and disappeared into the cold Chicago air like a memory evaporating in real time. I told her I was married. I showed her pictures of the kids. I didn't lie. I didn't cheat. But I felt like I did. Because something in me shifted that night, and now I can't shift it back. The morning after I got back from Chicago, Emily met me at the door with that warm, practiced smile. She kissed my cheek, asked about the trip, took my suitcase, and passed me the baby monitor without missing a beat. Like clockwork. I stood there, staring at her for a second too long, trying to picture her and Maddie side by side. Like two parallel universes had collided in my head and I couldn't figure out which one I belonged in anymore. "Everything okay?" she asked, mid-laundry folding. I nodded. "Just tired." She went back to pairing socks, humming some lullaby tune she always sings to her daughter. My son ran into the room wearing his Spider-Man pajamas, asking if I brought him anything. I gave him a mini snow globe from the hotel gift shop. He acted like I handed him a bar of gold. And in that moment I felt like the worst person alive. Because while I was there, in that perfect suburban picture, I was thinking about another woman's voice. Her laugh. Her hands. Her questions. "Do you ever wonder?" I thought the feeling would fade. That seeing Maddie had just stirred up some old emotions, and once the dust settled, I'd be back to normal. But it didn't fade. It intensified. It wasn't just about Maddie. It was about what she represented. With Emily, my life is clean. Straight lines. Meal plans. Joint calendars. Matching pajamas at Christmas. It's everything I was supposed to want. And I did want it. I do, I think. But somewhere along the way I stopped feeling anything. And maybe that's the root of it. I don't miss chaos. I miss feeling. I started noticing things. Subtle things. Like how Emily flinches just slightly when I touch her shoulder. Or how she smiles politely during dinner conversations but rarely laughs anymore. Like we've both settled into roles we didn't audition for. I think she feels it too. But we've built this life like a Jenga tower, and neither of us wants to be the one who pulls the wrong block. A few days later I got an email from Maddie. No subject line. Just 3 words, "You okay, Doc?" It sat in my inbox for 2 days. I didn't open it at work, didn't dare click it at home. But it haunted me. Like a siren under the floorboards, humming just loud enough to keep me awake. Finally, after everyone was asleep, I opened it. It was short. She just said it was good seeing me. That I seemed distant. Not sad. Not angry. Just tucked away like I was hiding behind a version of myself. She hoped I was happy. That was it. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Instead, I started reading through old texts we'd sent in college. I don't even know why I still had them. The last message from her, back in 2013, said, "If you walk away from this, you'll never get to wonder what if again. You'll know. You'll know." At the time, I thought that was just her being dramatic. Now, it reads like a damn prophecy. The next week, Emily's mom came to stay with us for a few days. She's the kind of woman who always has advice, even when you don't ask for it. At dinner, she casually dropped, "You know, Em, you're lucky. Most men your age have already started drifting. But he's still present. That's rare." Emily smiled and said, "Yeah, I know." I felt like I was choking on my mashed potatoes. Because I haven't been present in months. I've been floating just above my life like some ghost, watching it all from the ceiling. Going through motions. Smiling in pictures. Playing the part. And then one night, it all cracked. It was late. The kids were asleep. Emily and I were folding laundry again, always with the laundry, and she asked if I wanted to go up to the lake house with her parents in June. I said maybe. She asked why maybe. I told her I might have a conference. She looked at me, quiet for a moment, and said, "You've been off since Chicago." My stomach dropped. I played dumb. "What do you mean? You came back quieter. Sadder. Distant. And now you're always on your phone at night. You think I don't notice?" I didn't know what to say. Deny it? Gaslight her? Admit that she was right? She didn't press. Just folded a t-shirt and said, "I hope you figure out what you want." That was the part that killed me. Not the confrontation. Not the suspicion. Just how tired she sounded. Like she'd already made peace with the possibility that I might walk out the door one day and not come back. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the back porch, scrolling through photos. Our wedding day. The kids being born. Family trips. Smiles that used to feel real. And I felt like a stranger looking at someone else's life. And then I did something really stupid. I opened Maddie's email again. And this time, I replied. The email I sent to Maddie wasn't long. Just 4 words, "I don't know anymore." That's all it said. But when I hit send, it felt like I jumped off a cliff. She replied 6 minutes later. "Then I guess you're human." There was something disarming about that. No pressure. No agenda. Just someone seeing me, really seeing me for the first time in what felt like years. We started emailing. Nothing inappropriate, not really. Not at first. Just thoughts. Observations. Little pieces of ourselves we hadn't shared with anyone else in a long time. It was like opening a window after being stuck in a room that had grown stale. I told her how I felt like a ghost inside my own life. How I missed feeling alive, not just productive. She told me how freedom can start to feel like loneliness after a while, how sometimes she missed the stability she once ran from. It wasn't flotation. It was intimacy. And maybe that's worse. Because intimacy is what you crave when your soul is hungry, not your body. Emily started noticing. Of course she did. You don't spend 10 years with someone and not feel the shift when their eyes don't land on you the same way. One night, we were lying in bed. She was reading. I was staring at the ceiling again, replaying every word Maddie had written that day. Then Emily said very quietly, "Do you still love me?" I didn't answer right away. And that pause? That pause broke something in her face I can't unsee. She closed her book, put it on the nightstand, and just said, "Okay." That was it. No tears. No yelling. Just, "Okay." I told her yes. I said it too quickly, too forcefully. She nodded, turned off the lamp, and rolled to her side. I didn't sleep. Instead, I got up, went downstairs, and opened another message from Maddie waiting in my inbox. "Do you remember when we used to sit on that hill behind the library and talk about what we thought being 30 would be like?" I smiled. I remembered. She wrote, "You said you just wanted to feel useful." I said I just wanted to feel free. Funny how we both got what we wanted and still ended up hungry. That line messed me up. Because she was right. I was useful now. I was the responsible husband, the present father, the guy who shows up. But somewhere along the way I stopped asking myself what I needed. What I felt. And now it was like trying to remember a dream after waking up, fragments of feelings with no shape. At this point I hadn't done anything wrong. Not by textbook definitions. I hadn't kissed anyone, hadn't even seen Maddie again. But my mind had already left the house. And that's the part one thing people don't talk about enough. How betrayal doesn't always start in a hotel room or over drinks. Sometimes it starts with a thought. A question. A slow turn of the heart away from the person who's always been there. Emily asked me to come to therapy with her. She didn't say it accusingly. Just said it like she was asking me to carry something heavy with her for a while. I said yes. The therapist was a soft-spoken man named Greg with too many books and the kind of glasses that made you feel judged, even when he was just blinking. In our first session, Emily talked for most of it. She said she felt like she was living with someone who was grieving a life he never lived. Said she missed me even when I was sitting right next to her. Greg asked me how I felt about that. And I said something I hadn't planned on saying. I don't know if I'm the person she married anymore. Silence. Emily looked down. Didn't cry. Didn't flinch. Just sat with it. And that somehow hurt more than any fight we could have had. After that session, we sat in the car in silence for a long time. I started to reach for her hand on the gear shift, then stopped. She noticed. Later that night, I opened a new email draft. I stared at the blinking cursor, then finally typed, "What if we weren't done after all?" And then I deleted it. I deleted it because I knew what sending it would mean. And as much as I felt like I was drowning, I wasn't ready to light a match and burn down the only raft I had left. Instead, I wrote, "I think I'm starting to remember who I used to be. Thank you." Maddie didn't reply that night. Or the next. And I wondered maybe she saw what was happening. Maybe she knew that sometimes when someone says they're starting to remember who they were, it's because they're realizing who they're not meant to be anymore. 3 days after I sent that last email to Maddie, I finally got a reply. I think we both already know the answer. Nothing else. No sign-off. No emoji. Just that one sentence that landed in my chest like a brick. And that's when I realized the fantasy was over. We weren't 22 anymore. We weren't lost kids dancing around each other under string lights and stolen time. We were grown-ups with consequences and sleeping children down the hall. She wasn't offering me an escape. She was offering me a mirror. And I didn't like what I saw in it. Around the same time, Emily started sleeping in the guest room. No fight. No drama. She just moved her pillow, a blanket, and a pair of socks and started saying goodnight like we were roommates in a shared Airbnb. It shook me more than if she'd thrown a suitcase at my head. Because that's the thing about slow drifting, it doesn't make waves. It makes silence. And silence is so much harder to break than shouting. I tried to play it cool. I kept making coffee in the mornings. Asking if she needed anything at the store. Offering to take the kids so she could rest. She always smiled politely, said thanks, and then went right back to whatever she was doing. It was like living with a ghost of my marriage. One that still made grocery lists and wiped peanut butter off lunchboxes. Then came the night she asked me to sit down. It was after dinner. The kids were upstairs. There were dishes in the sink and Bluey still playing softly from the TV. And she just said, "Can we talk?" I sat. She didn't look angry. Or sad. She looked done. Like someone who had been collecting puzzle pieces for weeks and finally saw the picture clearly. She started slow. "I know you didn't cheat." I blinked. But you wanted to," she said, still calm. "You might still want to." Silence. She kept going. "It doesn't have to be physical to be betrayal. You've been somewhere else, mentally, for months. And I waited. I thought maybe it was work. Stress. Something we could fix. But then I saw the way you smiled at your phone. And how your eyes changed after Chicago. And I realized I wasn't the person bringing that out in you. I had no defense. Nothing I could say would make it better. Or undo it. I need to ask you something, she said. I nodded. Are you still in love with me? Or are you just afraid of what happens if you're not? That question hit me harder than anything Maddie ever asked. I tried to answer, I really did. But nothing came out. My mouth opened. My throat tightened. And all I could do was stare at the woman I'd promised forever to and realize that silence was my answer. She exhaled slowly like she'd been expecting it. I think we need space, she said. Not just emotionally. Physically. I'll take the kids to my sister's for a while. No, I said, finally finding my voice. You shouldn't be the one to leave. She raised an eyebrow. You think I should uproot my life with the kids for you to figure out what you want? I didn't have an answer to that either. She stood, calm as ever. I don't hate you. But I can't live with a version of you that's only half here. And with that, she went upstairs to pack. I sat on the couch, numb. The house felt louder than it ever had, every clock ticking, every faucet dripping, every door creaking. When she left the next morning, the kids hugged me like it was just a regular weekend trip. Emily kissed my cheek. That broke me. Not because it was affectionate, but because it was kind. Like she was already forgiving me for something I hadn't fully confessed to. After they left, I wandered around the house like a stranger. I opened drawers just to see what was in them. I stood in the hallway staring at the framed photo from our honeymoon in Italy. We looked so happy. So stupidly, blissfully happy. And then my phone buzzed. A message from Maddie. I hope you're okay. I stared at the screen for a long time. And then I did something I hadn't done before. I didn't reply. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't sure I wanted to. They left on a Thursday. By Friday, I realized I didn't know how to be alone anymore. The first morning without them was strange. The house was still. No cartoons. No whining. No cereal spilled on the counter. No sound of little feet running down the hall or Emily calling for someone to find the missing shoe. I wandered from room to room like I was searching for something. I kept opening doors, expecting someone to be behind them. I poured 2 cups of coffee out of habit. Made toast I didn't eat. It was like my body hadn't caught up with the reality of being left behind. And when I finally sat down at the kitchen table, something hit me I didn't expect. I missed her. Not Maddie. Emily. Not the version of her that folded laundry or planned meals. Not the mom version or the co-parent. Her. The woman who used to tuck her feet under mine on cold nights, who once cried watching a Subaru commercial, who told me I was her favorite place in the world. And I realized how long it had been since I'd really seen her. How long I treated her like scenery in a life I thought I had outgrown. I went into her bedroom and opened the closet. Half her side was empty. Her scent lingered faintly on the clothes she left behind. I sat on the bed and finally let myself fall apart. Because the truth is, I did love her. I do. But somewhere along the way, I stopped showing it. I stopped choosing her. Not with words, but with presence. With energy. With attention. That's the betrayal. Not that I emailed an old flame. Not that I wanted something else. But that I stopped fighting for what I already had. I told myself I'd lost the spark. That I missed who I used to be. But the truth? I stopped doing the little things that keep the spark alive. I let comfort become complacency. I mistook silence for peace and routine for resentment. And when Maddie came back into my life, vibrant, chaotic, unpredictable, she reminded me of a version of myself I'd buried under parent-teacher conferences and tax season. But Maddie wasn't the solution. She was the mirror. She didn't break my marriage. I did. Slowly. Quietly. With every night I chose my phone over connection. With every moment I let distance grow without pulling it back. That weekend I didn't leave the house. I sat in it. Sat with it. I reread every email I sent Maddie. Every reply. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was escape. A way to blame someone else for the emptiness I'd helped create. So I wrote Maddie one last time. I'm grateful you reminded me who I used to be. But I don't want to live in the past. I need to fight for the life I have, not the one I romanticized. Thank you for the clarity. I wish you peace. She didn't reply. And I didn't expect her to. Instead, I wrote something else. A letter to Emily. I told her everything. Not in a performative way. Not trying to earn forgiveness. Just truth. I told her how I'd lost myself and taken her down with me. How I let fantasy replace presence. How I saw her slipping away and didn't reach out soon enough, but that I finally see it. Really see it? And I want to fight. Not for comfort, but for us. For the messy, quiet, real love that we once chose every single day. And then I waited. Days passed. I didn't text her. Didn't push. I gave her space. I cleaned the house. Not out of guilt, but because it felt like honoring something sacred again. I folded the laundry. Washed the dishes. I sat in the quiet and let it change me. And then, 5 days later, the front door opened. It was late, almost 9 p.m. I heard the key in the lock and froze. It was Emily. She stepped inside slowly. The kids weren't with her. We stood in the hallway like strangers, like people who had once shared everything and now weren't sure how to say hello. I read your letter, she said. I nodded. Yeah. I believe you meant it. Another nod. She looked down. Took a breath. Then looked me in the eye. But meaning it isn't the same as changing. That hurt. But it was fair. Then she said, I'm not ready to come home. Not yet. But I wanted you to know I see the effort. And that maybe this isn't the end. My eyes stung. I nodded again. Because what else could I do? She stepped forward. Placed her hand on my chest. Just for a moment. Just enough to feel my heartbeat. Then she walked past me, up the stairs, into our room. She came down 10 minutes later with a few more things in a tote bag. As she left, she said quietly, start over. Not for me. For you. If we find our way back, I want it to be with the version of you that chose to become better. Not just to keep me. And then she was gone again. But this time, the silence didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like a chance. After Emily left that night, the house settled into a deeper kind of quiet. Not emptiness, stillness. Like the dust had finally settled after a long, silent storm. And in that stillness, I started doing the one thing I'd been avoiding since Chicago. I looked in the mirror and took responsibility. Not just for what happened with Maddie, but for every small moment I'd let the slow erosion begin. For the ways I withdrew when things got hard. For the nights I chose to zone out instead of lean in. For the times I mistook Emily's quiet for contentment. It's humbling, facing your own failures without flinching. And I had a lot of them to unpack. So I started small. Therapy alone this time. Once a week. It wasn't comfortable. The first few sessions felt like peeling off old, scarred skin. But eventually, I stopped performing. I dropped the guilt-driven monologue and started asking the harder questions. Why had I turned to Maddie instead of turning inward? Why did I confuse nostalgia with truth? Why did I wait for someone to notice I was drifting instead of screaming for help? I started journaling too. I wrote down the things I remembered about Emily. Not the surface stuff, but the real things. The way she snorts when she laughs too hard. The way she hums when she concentrates. The night we danced barefoot in our first apartment, no music, just heartbeats. I wrote about the person I used to be. The man she fell in love with. And I didn't write him like a lost relic, I wrote him like someone I could still become. Someone I wanted to become again. Not for her. Not for the marriage. For me. 2 months passed before she spoke to me in more than co-parenting logistics. She called one evening. Said she was in the neighborhood. Said she could drop the kids off early if I wanted. I said yes, of course. When she arrived, the kids ran into the house and she lingered at the door longer than usual. You seem different, she said. I smiled. Trying to be. She nodded, looked past me into the house. I can tell. There was a pause. And then she said something I didn't expect. I've been in therapy too. I didn't ask why. I just said good. Then she said, do you ever think we got too comfortable? That maybe. We forgot how to be us in the middle of all the parenting and planning. I did think that. All the time. I said yeah. I think we stopped choosing each other. She looked down. Do you think we could learn how to do that again? And there it was. Not a second chance. Not yet. But a door. A crack in the wall I thought was permanent. We started seeing a couples therapist again. Not to fix something broken, but to rebuild something new. We didn't move back in together. Not right away. We started dating. Once a week. No kids. No calendars. Just us. The first time we went out, we sat across from each other in a little Italian place downtown and laughed like we used to. Tentative, soft laughter. But it was real. We didn't talk about the kids. Or the house. Or Maddie. We talked about music. About fears. About how she sometimes felt invisible. About how I sometimes felt like I'd lost the right to ask for forgiveness. We listened to each other in a way we hadn't in years. There were still hard days. Days when she'd go quiet. Days when I'd feel her guard go up like a wall she wasn't sure she wanted to climb back down from. But the difference now? We didn't ignore it. We named it. 3 months later, she told me she was ready to move back in. I'm not promising forever, she said. But I'm promising to try again. To try with you. And that's the most honest love I've ever received. Because love isn't the wedding day. Or the family photos. Or even the late-night emails from someone who once set your world on fire. Love is what happens after the fire. When the embers are cooling and someone chooses to sit beside you and rebuild the warmth from scratch. We're still working. Still learning. Still healing. There are days when it's hard. Days when the guilt creeps in. When the memory of that email string replays in the back of my mind. When I wonder what would have happened if I'd made a different choice. But I've stopped living in the what if. Because every day when Emily chooses to wake up next to me. When she reaches for my hand across the table. When she laughs not politely but fully. I realize the real miracle isn't that we made it back. It's that she met me where I was. And gave me the space to meet her too. Not where we left off, but where we begin again.